Thank you for having me today. Thank you for Kohler for inviting me from London to be here today. I'm really honoured. I'm going to give you kind of a brief bio on my kind of background and kind of what I think experiential luxury is and how I see it in my kind of practice. So I grew up in a small estate in Islington in North London, which is very multicultural. We have people from Nigeria, from Ghana, Somalia, Eritrea, people from Britain as well. But what I loved about my estate was that it was very much about experiential luxury. I had this culture at my doorstep. You know, I didn't have to travel to all these countries because it was my neighbour who was Ghanaian, and my neighbour was maybe from Somalia. So it was quite powerful and quite special. This is how I saw my estate, as such a very kind of vibrant and eclectic environment, full of culture and stories and narratives. And what I loved about being here was that it was about community, about a sense of belonging and feeling like you belonged to a community. And I think what was great about here was that if you had one problem, it was a problem for the community, so you felt like you belonged to this estate. I grew up in a Nigerian family, a family of like six of us, and culture was very much part of my heritage and culture. And as a kid, I always struggled with, I was trying to work out, am I British or am I Nigerian? Who am I? How do I fit in between both these cultures? I love both the cultures really well, but I was always trying to understand, am I more Nigerian or am I more British? So I went to Lagos for the first time when I was like 11 or 12, and I was blown away by the culture and immersed by what luxury meant to me. So luxury wasn't about having the latest pair of Gucci shoes or the latest pair of Nike trainers, which I wanted as a kid, but my parents couldn't afford. But when I went to Lagos for the first time, I understood what luxury meant. And luxury meant culture. It meant Swiss Voile lace. It meant Dutch wax prints. It meant parties. It meant colour. So when I went back to Lagos and saw all this culture and was really immersed by what I'd seen for the first time, I wanted to bring it back into my work, and that's what I've done. So this is my grandmother, and for me, she is someone that talks about experiential luxury through her clothes, through how she's sat down, through what she's wearing, the expensive Swiss Voile lace, which is made in Nigeria, her jewellery. For me, that's what experiential luxury is. So I started off by looking at Nigerian parables, which is like storytelling. And these are words of wisdom my parents told me as a kid. So some of the parables are quite empowering. Some are trying to maybe inspire you about being good and being positive people. And also they're more like kind of like a life teacher, more like a Bible about how to treat the world nicely and how to be a better person. So as you know, I'm obsessed with chairs. I'm obsessed with furniture. And I kind of see chairs as people and who have feelings. And so in London, what I would do was I would go around London and picking up chairs. So by the end of the day, I might have like 10 chairs going to the bus stop and putting them in the baby area on the bus. And I remember getting lots of weird and angry looks by people who had buggies because I'd filled up the buggy space with chairs that I'd been finding around London. But what I loved about these chairs was I loved the narratives that these chairs had and the stories that they told. And for me, I think when we look at old furniture, we feel like they're kind of old and discarded and horrible and there's no narrative. But for me, that's where I found luxury. And the luxury in these old pieces of furniture was the narratives these chairs told and where I'd find them in London. So what I wanted to do was basically retell the narratives of these pieces of furniture that became quite sculptural. And I wanted to tell stories about my culture which is from my kind of Nigerian parables, the Dutch wax prints that we use, the color palettes, but also chairs that were not really functional, but more, they were more kind of sculpture pieces that ended up in museums around London. So these pieces tell stories about love, hierarchy, status, identity. And what was special about these chairs is that people always had their own kind of interpretation of what these chairs meant to them. So each chair had its own narrative, but when you sit on the chair, you look at the chair gives you like a different kind of feeling and emotion comes out of the chairs. And that's the power of chairs. So I went to Lagos and sort of worked with local craftsmen and basically told these narratives into the furniture. I also worked with local musicians and incorporated music through these parables, but mimicking the sound through the drums. So it was more about kind of a performance element, but also showing work that was inspired by these parables. So I got quite bored of doing furniture and using kind of narratives into small objects because I think I wanted to start doing spaces, so maybe like things like pavilions and like interiors and like working like public spaces. So this was my kind of first public commission where I was looking at community and how can we, I think as young children we're so worried about well, no, actually adults are really worried about, we don't play enough. And I think when you're a kid, you play with someone who's black, white, Asian, we're all one. Everyone's inclusive. Community is quite important to me. But then as adults in society now, we think it's worried about how much money you have. Do you have a big car? Have you got a big house? And that doesn't matter. But as kids, it's all about playing. And that's what I think we lost. I think it's losing in design now and in society. So I did a project for Citizen called Estate Playground. And I was looking at how I saw my playground as a kid as this really kind of brutal and rough council estate playground. No culture, there was nothing in there, no one was playing, it was really horrible. But as a kid, I saw my playground as this really kind of colourful, all-inclusive, luxurious playground. But I think someone who's an outsider may not have seen my playground as this luxury playground, but for me, as a kid, this is how I always saw my playground. So I was commissioned by the hotel to create a kind of experiential luxury playground in Shoreditch. As you know, it's quite a busy and a very kind of hipster, area. And what was special about this is that people respected this playground. So this lasted for like 2 weeks. There was no damages, there was no scratches. People appreciated it. So for me, this is, I think sometimes we take things that we see every day and we don't appreciate our kind of everyday objects. But for me, these are the things that I class as experiential luxury, because these are the things that have values, these are the things that have stories and narratives, and these are things that will last for years. They will never get old. Another project I wanted to talk about as well is this dialogue space I did in Sweden for the Ethnographic Museum. So as you know, the Ethnographic Museum have over 45 objects in their collection. So I was researching masquerades in north of Nigeria from the Dongo tribe. And again, in places like in Africa, like West and East Africa, masquerade is quite a big part of our culture. So performance and play is quite a huge part of our tradition. So I was researching these masquerades from north of Nigeria and from Hausa and from Cameroon, the Dongo tribe. So I wanted to try and incorporate these elements into a public space, a library, that people will be able to kind of read in and relax in. And I think there's no reason why, a place that's a library cannot be a luxurious place, So I wanted people to experience so much culture that they kind of see every day in villages around the world, but in the public space, incorporating color, incorporating community, and trying to bring everyone together and sort of giving them a sense of belonging. So this is the project I did last year, and if you go to Sweden, it's there. You can have a look in Sweden. So this was the kind of start for me of kind of doing public spaces and more kind of bigger projects, which will now lead me on to a project I'm doing currently now in London called Happy Street, which again is about community, it's about sense of belonging, it's about engagement with local community, and it's trying to bring everyone together. So the commission here was to basically design an underpass in Battersea in South London, but in trying to allow people to kind of feel connected and also make people to feel like they belong to the community. So as you know, Battersea is going through a massive redevelopment at the moment. So for this project here, we were looking at how colour can incorporate good health and good in society. So this is my proposal for the bridge in Battersea, which will be opening end of June. It's called Happy Street. And essentially it's looking at how colour can promote good health and well-being. And my love of colour, as you can see in my practice, has been exploded in this underpass, which will be opening end of June. So I've started off by doing furniture, which is using found objects, but gone on to bigger spaces like pavilions and bridges. And to finish off on a project which is about community, which is about, again, experiential luxury, because it's about two cultures coming together. It's about, anyone here know Dulwich at all? Anyone know Dulwich in South London at all? Yeah? So Dulwich is very much you have Dulwich and you have South London, which is Peckham, a very multicultural area, full of luxury, full of cultures, full of Swiss fellows, full of Nigerians, Ghanaians. It's very multicultural. Then you have Dulwich, which is very much kind of predominantly it's very much a one type of demographic, which is not a bad thing. So with Dulwich Picture Gallery, I was looking at this amazing cave, this kind of Dutch Pratt's cave in Lagos, Nigeria, called Balongo Market. And what was quite interesting here was looking at how this market seller had created this kind of luxurious pavilion with his Dutch Pratt's prints, which was also his kind of hibernation from all the heat in Lagos, Nigeria. So we also looked at this mosque in north of Nigeria, which is where all the Hausa people kind of pray and worship, I think day to day. So we're quite immersed by the kind of patterns, kind of ornaments, which is quite historic and very much about the culture of people in this north of Nigeria. And this is the Colour Palace, which will be opening in Dulwich on the 1st of June, which again is about inclusivity. It's about how we can incorporate luxury through colour, through pattern, culture and identity. And I want to try and see a lot more of this in studios in London, maybe even also in Joburg as well, and just in general in design industries. But I think luxury isn't just about what you have or what you think is luxury. I think luxury is purely about, I think for me, it's about culture, it's about inclusivity, it's about identity, and it's about giving people a sense of belonging. Thank you very much.